Hey, I'm back with Rage by Bob Woodward. I guess you can tell who it's about, right? Murphy just knocked something else over down there in the hall chasing a bug. If you hear any crazy noises, it's her. Okay, so chapter 9 of Rage. I lost my pencil. What'd she do with it? I need that. Is it behind my ear? No. Oh, it's on the floor. Hang on a second. Okay. Okay, so here we go with Jared Kushner. He had a unique central role. Officially, the de facto chief of staff. And he was deeply involved. He's a 2003 Harvard graduate. He had a JD MBA degree from New York University. He is smart, organized, self-confident, and arrogant. Okay, so he was assigned to resolve the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, which was actually Rex Tillerson's job since he was the Secretary of State. And he was also much more experienced than 39-year-old baby. Trump's like, if Kushner can't do it, nobody can. He didn't. He had 4 or 5 plans that he took to Tillerson, and who was skeptical. And Tillerson was like, that dog don't hunt, that kind of thing, on all of them. Kushner thought if you throw enough money at it, it would work. And Tillerson just said, they don't care about your money. They'll take your money, and 5 years from now, we'll be back in the same boat. And that won't buy peace. Kushner didn't think Tillerson was up to the job being Secretary of State. And that Kushner thought Tillerson resented the fact that he had been friends with Netanyahu for 20 years. Kushner thought his dealings with Netanyahu were nauseating, stomach turning. Okay, so Trump's first international trip, he went to Saudi Arabia, and then then they went to Tel Aviv, and they met with Netanyahu. So Trump shows up, and Kushner runs out and he grabs Tillerson. You got to get in there, he said. And they're showing this president this video, and the president was just exploding. Netanyahu is showing Trump a video, okay? You've got to calm the president down. Okay, so Kushner didn't know whether, Tillerson didn't know whether Kushner was play acting or just trying to set him up, but he went in there and Trump is like, watch this is unbelievable. And it was an obvious, spliced together Photoshop movie that the, took everything out of context that the president of Palestinians, his name is Mahmoud Abbas. He was supposed to be Israel's partner in the peace deal, but it sounded from this video that he was ordering the murder of children. And Trump said, Tillerson said to Trump, you realize that whole thing is a fake. And Trump said, it's not fabricated. They've got the guy on tape saying it. This point, Trump was questioning whether or not he should support Netanyahu. And he was wondering if maybe Netanyahu was actually the problem. Netanyahu had definitely manufactured the tape, and he didn't want the U.S. Trump's administration to have any pro-Palestinian sentiments. So the next morning, Trump met with Abbas and totally unloaded on him, calling him a murderer and a liar and someone he could trust. And he said, "You're nothing but a murderer. You tricked me." But then Kushner disputes all this. And Trump finally said to Abbas that we're going to act like this little conversation never happened. And I'm going to say some nice things about you, and you're going to say some nice things about me, but I just want you to, but now you know how I really feel. Of course, Abbas was, a perfect gentleman. He didn't even come back on him, He said, I welcome you to Palestine, and you are a great guest, and we're glad that you're in Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus. And he again said he is serious, that he wants to make peace with the Israelis. Of course, President Trump out in public said that he wanted to, he wanted a historic peace deal, and he thanked both of them for hosting him that day. And then Trump immediately closed down the PLO office in D.C. and canceled all U.S. aid to the West Bank and Gaza, as well as all the money and aid that had previously been given to the UN for the Palestinian refugees, because Trump said, well, you know what I think about him. That's the end of chapter 9. Chapter 10, this is about Dan Coates. Dan Coates' wife is Marcia. She was worried about him. He called in his senior staff about 3 months into the job. He said, I need 3 things, because he wasn't sleeping. I've got to sleep. And it was Trump's tweeting all night that was keeping him awake. 2, I can't have a McDonald's hamburger late afternoon, and you can't expect me that's going to work with me. It's not going to work. He had to have a decent lunch. 3rd, he had to exercise. Because he knew it reduced stress, and this was an extremely stressful job. Now, you remember he's DNI, so he's had a DNI, so that's Department of National, I don't remember what it is, DNI. Director of National Intelligence? I think that's it, because he's got all these agencies under him. Yeah, Director of National Intelligence. That is now held by I don't know who it's held by right now. Nice looking guy, but whatever. I mean, Dan Coates has been around forever. He's not a bad guy. I mean, again, as I've said with so many of these people, that I don't agree with their politics, and there's a lot of things that I have, I'm totally not eye to eye with them about. He's still not a bad guy, like our John McCain. Our hero, John McCain. So anyway, he figured out he's got to delegate all this stuff, that it wasn't a one-person job. He couldn't handle it all. So he hired somebody, Sue Gordon. She was a former CIA analyst. She had all kinds of 37 years of experience in the intelligence agencies or world or whatever. So she's got to run it. So he said he'll be the one that works on the outside with the, White House, National Security Council, State and Defense, but Sue had to be the one that ran it from the inside. So James Mattis before hadn't known Dan Coates. So they had lunch, and they were immediately friends. They were immediately respected each other. And so they soon began staying afterwards when Trump would leave the meetings. And Coates would say, like, what is going on? Trump wanted to withdraw troops from Afghanistan and South Korea, and he was just nuts. He'd just say, get them out. You can't just do that. Seriously, I've told you guys before, I would make a better president than Trump. So anyway, they started to meet. Mattis didn't think Trump had any moral compass at all. Coates didn't think he had any kind of plan at all. He didn't care about the troops, the allies, the world, anything. And, Coates had arrived at the same conclusions that the most powerful man in the world had no moral compass at all. This is a quote from Coates. To him, a lie is not a lie. It's just what he thinks. He doesn't know the difference between truth and a lie, end quote. So they were often across the table from each other in the Situation Room, and they were concerned. And they not only had to deal with our adversaries, but they had to deal with the failure of the administration. Coates always stuck to the facts. Mattis knew Coates was, really under a lot of strain, but he was cool, not defensive, not intimidated. Mattis thought that Coates was the model of what we needed in government services, although Mattis thought maybe he was too decent. So anyway, their relationship got closer, and remember that Mike Pence and Dan Coates were really, really good friends. They were both from Indiana, right? So, as Coates and Mattis became better friends, Coates and Pence became further apart, and he said that Pence was in a cocoon. And Coates thought he was passive, subservient, and obedient. And his wife thought that Mike Pence thought that God put him in the place that he's in, and that's what he's doing his job. That's what he thought. He was going to be a good VP, supportive to the president, and that God put him there. So apparently they were at a White House dinner, and Pence came over to say goodbye to them, and Coates, Marcia said this, she asked Pence how things were going, and he said, she asked him how he was stomaching this, and he whispered in her ear, stay the course. At the same dinner, the exact same thing was said to Coates by Pence. Stay the course. So that's the end of chapter 10. 14. Okay, so at this point, Mattis is like worried about a possibility of war that could kill millions. And the reason about this was because of North Korea. Kim Jong-un had nuclear weapons and intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they could actually reach our homeland. So Kim had been firing off missiles, and they were alarmed, and so they had an emergency meeting, and so everybody was on the same page, so they were able to, make a plan. So Trump had said that Mattis could use a conventional interceptor to shoot down any missiles, but they couldn't actually shoot. Like if one landed on our land, if one landed on our country anywhere, Mattis couldn't have launched that without the president's permission to fire back and land it at North Korea. By then they could shoot another one, right? So they shot down missiles that were coming in. They were really, really worried that we might be in a nightmare of a nuclear war. Trump was detached. Mattis didn't care what Trump said. Trump's orders were, again, random, impulsive, unthoughtful. He just ran the Department of Defense. He kept him informed of the private meetings, but wouldn't do it in public. He didn't get any guidance from Trump other than an occasional tweet. So, only the president can authorize the use of nuclear weapons. And they were worried about, one of these nuclear bombs would kill like millions, a couple of million people. Because at this point, Trump was putting sanctions, draconian sanctions, they say, on North Korea. A rhetorical assault on Kim, threatening fire and fury using nuclear. And this was all in tweets and public remarks. The third element was military pressure. And Mattis had a lot of ways to pressure Kim. I think I can quote this because this is a quote of Abraham Lincoln's that Mattis knew. He knew this by heart. Quote, "Men who take up arms against one another in public war do not cease on this account to be moral beings responsible to one another and to God." End quote. And another quote that of Lincoln's that he writes here, which is Mattis was also a really religious guy. President Lincoln had said this: "I have been driven many times upon my knees by the overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go except on my knees." So at the war, there was a war memorial chapel. And let's see, this was I don't know what cathedral this was, National Cathedral, I don't know. There was a war memorial chapel that wasn't, people, you couldn't really see it from the cathedral, it was back in a corner. And so Mattis would go there and he would pray. He knew what a war on the Korean Peninsula would be about. Yeah, he said if our country was in peril, he couldn't let Western news coverage of the U.S. and he would have to stop news coverage. No, wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. these pages stick together. He would have to stop an escalation. And nuclear war are supposed to be a deterrent. They're not supposed to be used anywhere by anyone. Those are my words. So he didn't think Trump would strike the first blow. There's some kind of a strategic command in Omaha. And they were reviewing a regime change. This goes back to what I said the other day. I'm not so sure that we're not responsible for that regime change. Because where is Kim Jong-un? Trump probably followed Putin's lead and poisoned him, and now that's why he's in a coma. Ugh. Yeah, this War Memorial Chapel is in the National Cathedral. God, I can't get comfortable in this chair. I need to change chairs, I think. And he would go back there during the year. He got some peace there. There was also a Holy Spirit chapel. He said there was never a point where he felt completely comforted. Every day he was weighed down. He didn't want war. And he didn't want to be Hamlet, to be or not to be, I mean, he really was focused on how to stop it. He knew that the worst possible situation was nuclear weapons, and that would change the shape of the world. They kept searching for a diplomatic solution. Okay, so now North Korea has launched some kind of ballistic missile that was capable of reaching us, and it was they were testing it to see how far it would go. I don't think that any of these had warheads on them, but this one could go 4,000 to 5,000 miles to Alaska, Hawaii, and even the West Coast. It was a crisis. And Trump had publicly promised that Kim Jong-un would never reach this capability. Okay, so then at this point, they were firing from South Korea, because, we have troops in the South Korean peninsula. They would fire a tactical missile for demonstration and warning. And the North Koreans just ignored it, like they didn't even see it. They shot at the same distance as the other one that North Korea just shot, just to show them that we can get you from South Korea. And the whole intent was to let Kim know that he needed to worry about his safety. They didn't even respond. A couple of times this happened. General Brooks, who was, I don't know, he's one of the big guys, I don't know if he's commander of the U.S. and South Korean alliance. His quote, and he said this in public: "Self-restraint, which is a choice, is all that separates armistice and war." End quote. So then North Korea continued to fire these ballistic missiles. This one could have gone 6,200 miles and hit much of the continental U.S. So more demonstration missiles were shot off from us. I mean, you know, we could completely obliterate them. And then, apparently, there was no evidence that North Korea even, they didn't acknowledge these missiles at all. Oh, I'm at 25. I'm never going to make it through this chapter. So they were tracking flight paths of missiles. Okay, so Mattis had a flashing light in his bathroom that would go off if there was a problem. A bell would ring in the bathroom. He had all these, if there were anywhere he was, he had some kind of immediate contact that they could warn him that something was happening. He could get logged on. No holidays or weekends, no time off, period. So Alaska was ready to shoot. California was ready to shoot. The Navy 7th was ready to shoot. They were really scared about this. They really thought that they were going to war. So North Korea flew directly over Japan, and that is an escalation. And Tillerson said North Korea is out of control. I mean, these guys were really worried. And, you know, none of us knew this. I mean, we knew a little bit of it. We didn't know how worried these guys really were. They never knew whether it was a test or a warhead or an attack. Mattis goes back to church. You know, which is you know, I don't have a problem with that, of course. He went there to find strength and peace. Okay, so now North Korea had conducted 6 tests, 17 times the power of Hiroshima. And some scientists even thought it was a hydrogen bomb. They were worried that we were going into war with North Korea. I mean, very, very worried. Trump said, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, who obviously a madman who doesn't mind starving or killing his people, will be tested like never before. And Kim Jong, now the foreign minister of North Korea called Trump a Mr. Evil President. Well, he was right. Anyway, none of this stuff was, this is when Trump called him Kim Jong-un little rocket man and told him he wouldn't be around much longer. And Mattis just thought this is worthless. This is worthless rhetoric. It's childless. And, you know, he got over this kind of crap when he was in second grade. Trump doesn't understand. He doesn't have the mental framework. 28 minutes. You guys, I'm going to have to stop. I got a page more to go. So anyway, Trump's impact here will be long-lasting. The degradation of our country is real, tangible. Truth is no longer governing the president's statements. Trump told Mattis that Kim Jong-un told him he was totally prepared and ready to go to war. So Dan Coates said that we all knew we were going to war. So they had to get ready. Okay, I'm stopping here, and then we'll go on with 12, okay? Okay, bye. Hey, you guys, subscribe, like, all that stuff.